So this time, let's actually add something to dodge, some enemies. So we should probably add like a car or something. But for now, what we'll do is we're just going to create a new cube. And this cube right here, this is going to act as a car for now. Sure, it doesn't look anything like a car. It looks a bit more like a cube than does a car. But you know what? It's going to be okay. In fact, you know what? We'll stretch it out a little bit by hitting R and stretching it out. Now, doesn't that just look a bit more like a car? Not really. But you know what? It'll be fine. It's actually a bit small. Let's scale it up too. Okay, now it's a bit more like a car. Sort of. Ish maybe. And let's rename it to car or obstacle. You don't have to do cars. As I've been sort of trying to say like the whole time. You know, this is your sort of project. You don't necessarily have to do cars, but we do for sure want something to dodge an obstacle. There's trees in the way. Move over tree. Cool. So with this car, what we're going to want to do is we're essentially just going to want it to go just across the road like that and be a potential burden or obstacle. So if we go to add component and scroll down, we want to apply some physics. Now we've got a bunch of stuff. Now what typically we'd do, we could do a rigid body, and there's another one in here called constant force. There we go, constant force. Now constant force pretty much does what it's going to say in the tin. Also notice brought in a rigid body with it because rigid bodies need to come in, which has got gravity, so I don't know if that'll affect us. We might turn gravity off. Let's find out. So I'm just going to add some force. Let's have a look what we want to do. We want to go x, looks like minus x. So let's try minus 10 and see what happens. Nothing. Absolutely nothing happened. Let's try minus 10,000. Oh, okay. So we know it's going to be somewhere in there. Minus 100. Okay, we're getting closer. So once you've found your number and you're happy with it, we've kind of just got to mess about with it until it looks alright. Like I say, we could turn gravity off because that's going to be the amount of friction. See how it sort of builds up speed as it's going. Yeah, it's alright. That'll do. You can tweak it and change it and get your values to sort of however you want them to be. That's up to you. You could also, like I say, you turn off gravity and that'll stop the friction between the floor and make it go a bit faster if you don't want gravity. But let's see, I'm going to go minus 16 and then I'm going to be done. I'm going to leave that as it is. So now the thing is, we've got this car and it's there and it moves across, and that's a potential obstacle as we're going across. Ooh, can we hit it? Go, go, go. No! Too slow. Have we got collisions on? Nice, we do. Cool. So what we're going to do next? Yes, next we need to spawn it. So we're going to need to create a spawning script. We need a spawning script. So let's go in the script section. Let's right click and create a new C# script, which we'll call level script, because we're going to handle this in the level manager or level manager _s. Hit OK, tell Visual Studio whatever it wants to know. Cool. So spawning inside Unity is actually a process that we call instantiate. and we're going to be using instantiate to create cars at different times and different periods. So we need to set that up. Now, to do an instantiate, we can go instantiate, and what we can do is we can hover over it, and it says object instantiate object, and it requires the object information. It requires a vector3 for position and a quaternion for rotation. So that's the information that it's going to look from us, and this clones the object original and returns a clone. Cool. That's what it's going to do. That's what it's going to do. So instantiate. So we know it's going to want a object. I'm just writing this down. It's going to want a pos, and it's going to want a rot. That's going to be all kind of wrong because we've got to fill in that information. So, but we know that's what information we've got to give it, because that's what it's asking for. It's asking for the object, the position, and the rotation. Now, I think probably the easiest thing for us to do would be to start creating some public variables, because we might want to edit these inside the game, and I don't know what the numbers are going to be off the top of my head. So firstly, let's create a game object, a public game object, which we'll call car. So that's going to be our object. That's what we're going to spawn. So at this point, we could actually change this now to car. And that's going to say spawn this, which we've not set yet, but we'll set that in Unity. The next thing we're going to want is a public location. What should we do? I might do this on, let's give it a test. Shall we? Public position. Let's do it. No, we want a. Do we want a transform? No, we want a vector. Sorry, I was just thinking, should I do this from a spawn point? We could get a spawn point, and we can move that spawn point around, and it would just constantly spawn from the spawn point, depending on where we had the spawn point. But I'm just thinking about what's going to be the best way to do this. And we'll just call this local pos. And then we're also going to need a public vector3. We're going to want a rotation. You know what? No, we'll just get the player's rotation for that. So the local pos is going to be local pos, and the rotation is actually going to be from our player. So let's get our player. So so let's create another public, and we want another game object, because we're going to say we'll make a spawn point, because we need to tell it where it's going to be spawning from, and then we'll get the rotation of that as well. So that'll be good. Yes, public game object, which we'll call spawner, and then for our rotation, we can just get the spawner dot local transform. Transform dot rotation, and that should give us our rotation. So it's going to instantiate a car at the position with the transform, and let's save that. And now instantiate is going to be complicated, and that's probably going to give me an error. Oh, I've not got an error. Excellent. So we are going to need to assign this to something. So first, let's create. What should we do? We'll create a cube, and this is going to be a spawn point. Let's just reset its location. Reset your position. Move you over here. And I don't actually want it to be visible, so I'm just going to turn off the mesh renderer, and this is going to be our spawn point. Spawn point. There we go. So we've now got our spawn point. This is where things are going to spawn from. So what we can do is we can drag on our. Should we drag it on our level manager? Yeah, we'll create another game object. So let's create an empty, which we'll call level manager. because in each level you'd have different values and different settings, and you'd want to be able to just sort of change these quickly with a public variable. So I'm going to drag on my level manager script to that, and now we need to set these values. So it's going to ask us, what is our car? Well, actually, we've not created a car yet. So if we go back to our folder, we need to create a new folder. We've got a tree in here, don't need a tree. Need to create a new folder called prefabs. Now essentially a prefab is we're just going to get our car and just drag and drop it into here, and it's going to make a copy of our car. So if we had lots of different information here, different scripts, different everything, what we've got is our constant force and our rigid body. This is just like an object now, it's like a character, because again, if you think of games say like a Call of Duty, you don't just like spawn a bad guy in because there's different types of bad guys and different types of guns. You spawn the bad guy holding the shotgun, and maybe he's got a jetpack on his back. You know, you've got different things that could be connected, and one player's got this much speed and different variations. You've got different variations of the player holding different objects with different abilities. So each one of those would be considered a prefab, if that makes sense. Probably not, I don't know. Okay, so let's go to our level manager, and we need to start setting it up. So now we've created this car, we can drag and drop car into there. Excellent. The local position, which, I mean, this level manager can just be sort of anywhere. We don't actually need to sort of see this. We're going to do it from the spawn point, won't we? But you know what? Because I typed in vector 3, we'll just do it from this. So 7, 0.6, and 2.2. So 7, 0.6, 2.2. 7, 0.6, 2.2. Like I said, probably could have just told it the information at the spawn point, since we're already getting the spawn point, and just said the position, like we did for the other one. And let's give that a try. Let's see if it spawns now from. It should spawn one car. It did, but it spawned it in the ground. It spawned it in the ground. So we need to find our spawn point and potentially raise it up a little bit more. What we're saying, so maybe say it's like 2. So we need to go back to our level manager, set the Y to 2, and try again. Okay, 2's a bit too high. We'll get there, we'll get there. Not bad, not bad, we're getting closer. It'd help if we knew the height of the box, because then we could get it just right. Oh my god, it did not like that. 1 point, oops. You know what? Here's what we're going to do real quick. We're going to go back to our script, and instead of using this local pos, we're just going to use the same thing as we've got here, but change it to, instead of local position, to position. And then saves that. Now, instead of having to mess about getting the local position, which we're not actually using anymore, it's now defunct, all we need to do is move the spawn point. Oh my god, this would be so much easier if the cars didn't use gravity. You know what? I'm just going to tell the car not to use gravity. Where's your rigid body? Use gravity. Done. What? Why are you still using gravity? Unless you're colliding. This happens. You just got to roll with it. Well, you see how it's got, like, why did it have a bit of rotation on it? Let's, let's have a look, car. What's going on with you, car? Let's just freeze your rotations as well. Don't want you to rotate. Let's use gravity now. Collision section. Fine. Cool. Okay. We're getting a bit closer. You know, I'm going to turn my mesh renderer on as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the height of my car. So, my car, let's just give it some better scales. 4 by 2 by 2.5. Done. And I'm going to say you are going to be 4 by 2 by 2.5. There you go. Now you're the same size as my car. And this is going to be so much easier, and I should have just done this before. Oh, it's spawning on... It's colliding with the bloody initial box. God damn it. I'm so annoyed at myself. That's why it was rotating weirdly, and when it had gravity on it was behaving bizarre. It's 'cause it was colliding with the bloody box that we had on. Okay. Problem solved. We've now got a spawn point, and we've got a car spawning. And we're doing a bit of problem solving. Good times. Should I edit this out? No. No, we'll keep it. Okay, because it's a good learning process. Good learning point. So we've now got a car that spawns. Excellent. Woohoo. Great stuff. We don't need you anymore. We can comment that out. Or we could just delete it. Doesn't really matter. But the car only spawns once. Now, if only there was some kind of system that we could use to make it spawn continuously in some kind of repeating way. Now, we could use update, but oh my god, that would spawn too many too fast and the game would crash. Possibly, probably. I could show you. Shall we show you? I'll show you. Save you testing it out. Okay, and I'm just going to save it as well first. So the computer test. See how much the computer can handle it. Whoa, they're just spawning up on top of each other and actually moving. Look how many there are. But hey, the game's staying strong. Oh my god. That's amazing. Oh, fair play. Okay, computer's struggling. Oh my god, exit play mode. Cool. That was fun. Let's get rid of that. So instead of putting this here, we need another system that we have used before. I think we used before. We did. We used invoke. We used invoke before, and we're going to use invoke again, but we're going to use an adaptation of invoke. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to create a new scene, function, which we will call spawn function. Now we'll call it spawn method. Let's get used to using the word method. And add your little curly braces. Cool. And now every time that we run this method, what it's going to do is it's going to instantiate the car. Exciting times. It's going to instantiate the car every time we call it. Now what we need to do is we need to actually call that. And like I said before, we used something called invoke to call it, but this time we're going to use something called invoke repeating. Invoke repeating. And it's going to be the same process. It's going to ask us what is the name of our method, which we called spawn method. It's case sensitive, so make sure you get that. And then we're going to say comma float time. It's going to say when do you want this to start, and we'll just say let's just start after 2 seconds. And then it's going to say how often do you want it to spawn something, and I'm going to say every 2.8, and I'm going to put an F after it because that makes it a float, comma save all, and then let's give it a test. It spawned one, but why didn't it move? Huh. That was interesting. What is going on there? Let's get a spawn point and move it up off the ground. Let's just make sure it's not, I think it was in the ground. Cool. I think we can probably be safe to turn back gravity back on the car as well. Let's find out. Now it kind of looks gross spawning there, so I'll move it off screen in a few minutes. I'll never make it past that. The timing's too... Ow. Ow. The timing was too crazy. Spawn point. Let's move it a bit more over here, so it's a bit more off screen. We don't want to actually see it. Cool. And what would happen if hypothetically we were to duplicate this spawn point and had one over here too? Well, let's find out. We've now got 2 spawn points and we've got to hide the mesh renderer. One's spawning, but the other is not. Interesting. Because the spawn point itself does not actually have the script on it. It does not have the script on it. So we would have to go back to our level script and duplicate this line. So let's just go copy, paste, and we want another spawn. So we're just going to copy this as well. And we'll call this spawner 2. And on you, we'll call you spawner 2 and spawner 2. Go back to a game, click on a level manager and tell spawner 2 to be spawn point 2, which I didn't rename. Look at that. Look at that. Hypothetically, because we're just getting this thing's rotation, what would happen if we rotated this 90 degrees? If we actually just wrote it down 90 degrees, because that's a lot easier. We wanted to do 180 degrees, John. It's still going left because of the constant force on the car. Yeah, what you're going to do. We'll just put that back to where it was and deal with that in another video. But for now, if you wanted to have multiple spawn points, that is how you could do it. So that'll do for this video. Good work, guys.